Am I supposed to talk now? Is that why the music got quieter? Okay. Welcome to Wednesday, hippies. I am Professor Paul. I am your host of Student of the Gun Radio. And we're glad that you are joining us for this middle-of-the-week edition of Student of the Gun. And, of course, on the other side is Jared. And Jared has got his SWAT Fuel fitness moment. He's got it all working up in his brain right there. But before we jump into that, I just want to say, Liam Neeson, you're dead to me. And that's all I have to say about that. How about you, Jared?
Oh, he's been dead to me.
Yeah, he's been... let me tell you when he was dead to me. I saw the cracks in the armor before, but then when he did that Flight movie, or Nonstop, that's what it was. He did that movie Nonstop, and I watched that piece of garbage. I shouldn't have gone. I know I should have known better. I know you guys are out there like, oh, you can't hold actors responsible for what they do in movies because they're just dancing monkeys. They just read the script. They just do what they're told. Really? So if I gave you a script and I said, read these words, and I know these words go against your beliefs, and I know they go against your convictions, but I'm paying you to be in this movie, so I want you to say the opposite of your beliefs and your convictions. Would you do it? Well, if you're a Hollywood prostitute, then the answer is yes, you would do that. But Nonstop was a piece of garbage. Glenn Beck warned us all on that one. He said, don't go see this movie. You'll be offended by it. And I listened to Zach, and he's like, oh, let me go see it. And so we went and saw it. I'm done. I am 100%. Taken part number 2 was garbage. I'm sorry. It was junk. It was ridiculous.
Maybe we should stop talking about the movies that he's in. Because all we're doing is we're giving him publicity.
Yeah, okay. But, yeah. So if you guys haven't seen the Liam Neeson coming out saying how, and apparently he used an expletive because they bleeped it out. How it was blank insane how many guns we're allowed to have in America, and that's just insane.
Maybe he should go back where he's from.
And that the thing is like, well, what does that have to do with anything, Paul? Well, the whole reason that came up is because they were asking him his thoughts and opinions on the terrorist attacks in France, in Paris. Not one, but two terrorist attacks in France. So they're asking him about that, and he uses that to get on his America has too many guns bandwagon. So if you haven't heard, and the reason I'm mentioning this, Jared, is because I think a lot of people don't have Facebook and they don't see things during the week, and they find out about it by listening to us. So, I wouldn't give my money to him, and I would not go watch Taken 3. There's no way I was going to watch it anyway after that second turd. So you ready to thank our sponsors and get into the SWAT Fuel moment?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors who provide us support so we can have these cool pop filters and black carbon steel microphones and monitors that tell me how long I've been talking. And that would be Brownells at brownells.com. If you own a gun, Brownells has something for you. Colt at colt.com, the makers of the LE901 rifle. We've got SWAT Fuel, makers of SWAT Fuel.
Makers of SWAT Fuel. Yes, SWAT Fuel makes SWAT Fuel. Imagine that. They actually have several different kinds of SWAT Fuel. They've got the 9mm, which is a fat-burning formula. Then they've got the Plus P, which is an endurance formula. Then they've got the 40 caliber multivitamin. And he's actually in the works of making a new product, but I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we can't release it yet.
It's going to be...
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool.
We're kind of excited.
Did you want me to go ahead and go into
Well, excess sights, fast sights in any light. Mm-hmm. And velocity triggers designed for precision. And go to velocitytriggers.com and check those guys out there. Now, you just go ahead and jump into the SWAT Fuel
Fitness Tips. Fighting Fitness Moments. Fighting Fitness Tips. I'll call it SWAT Fuel Fighting Fitness Tips. That's what we'll do.
You can call it whatever you want.
That's what it's called for this week. I might change it next week. I don't know. But this week I'm going to talk about documentation. I've had a couple questions about whether you should document what you're doing when you're working out or whatever. I would recommend documentation in business and working out and different things. But this is about working out. If you document what you do when you work out, you do write down the exercise, how many reps you do, what weight you're using, and stuff of that nature. That's pretty much what I do. What exercise, the time it takes
on the treadmill.
Yeah, well, if you're lifting weights, then you could do a couple different things. You could do the weight that you have and how many reps you did, or you could do the weight that you're using and the time, how long you did it. If you're going for how many reps, the most reps, and what documentation does for you is you won't always see physical improvement right away. But if you document what you're doing, and you'll notice after a week, maybe a week and a half, you'll notice immediately almost that your reps are more, you're doing more reps, you got more weight on the bar or whatever you're doing. You're noticing your improvements, and that's motivation for you.
And not only that, but you know what my main form of documentation is, Jared? It's a paper calendar. I got a paper calendar over my desk, and I put two things on that when I work out that day. I put an X in the corner of it to indicate that I did exercise in some form or fashion that day. Now, I don't always do treadmill. I don't always do punching bag. I don't always do mat work or what have you. But if I did physical exercise that day, I indicate it with an X. And I also, if I weigh myself, I put my weight. And I think that you'll agree with me as far as documentation is concerned. It's if you don't monitor what you're doing, if you don't track what you're doing, what happens is you kind of lose track of it, and it's easy to get away from it. Like when I look at my calendar, I know how many black X's are in the corner, and if I see it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's been 5 days since I put a black X on the calendar. Because let's face it, people get busy. You get busy, I get busy, everybody gets busy, but you look at that calendar, you're like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to get to the point where I go a whole entire week without putting an X on the calendar. Or the weight thing too. If you're trying to maintain a weight, my goal for my weight loss was to be 6'1" and below 220 pounds. So I did that, I achieved it, and now I monitor to make sure that I'm not creeping back up, north of 220. And you don't want to not weigh yourself for 2 months and then you're 229. Because let's face it, folks, you always look the same to yourself in the mirror. Whether you're 240, 230, 220, 210, you always look the same to yourself because your eyes are used to looking at you. But you can't lie to the scale doesn't lie. Or does it?
So you can make it lie. But and another thing, and I'm like a hardcore Nazi at documenting the stuff that I do. I document everything, and even little minute details. Dad just does an X in his weight on the calendar, whereas I'll write down the entire routine that I did, exactly what I did with each routine. And what that does for me, I found that not everything's going to work. Like what works for me doesn't work for you. So I can tell you what I do to make myself the way I want myself. But it's not going to work for you. It may not work for you. So to find out what works for you, it's trial and error basically. You do something, and by documenting it, you can see if it works for your body. And if it does, then you keep doing that thing. I'll get into the rest in the TV show. There's certain time periods that you do stuff for, and then you change it up. But when you document stuff, you figure out what works for you. So if something works for you, keep doing it, and if it doesn't, drop it off. Stop doing it. And the only way you're going to know that is if you take documentation, if you document it.
Now, would you recommend that people stick with a certain routine for more than a week, more than a couple sessions? If somebody does a routine, like they do it twice, and then they're like, oh man, I did that Tuesday and I did it again on Thursday, and now it's Saturday and I don't really see any difference. How long should somebody wait if they're doing, whether it's a lifting routine or something like that, before they expect to see results?
Well,
do you need to give yourself time?
You should change something that in your workout. You should change something every single time you work out. But for a general oversight of one exercise, 3 weeks, and then change it up.
Okay, so give yourself 3 weeks before you say, "Oh, this is no good. I don't want to do this anymore."
Yeah, and if you look it up, it's called the conjugate method of training. Louis Simmons developed it, Westside Barbell, world champion powerlifter, and I actually learned that from John Saylor, who was my coach in Ohio. He did judo. He taught judo at the Olympic training team at the Olympic Center in Colorado, and so he passed along that information that he learned from Louis. He passed it along to me.
Now, one other thing for as far as documentation, how do you feel about time off? Letting your body rest.
You have to let your body rest. You have to. Think about it like this. If you keep working your muscles, like I'm trying to think of an analogy here.
Like turn the engine off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could use the car analogy. Like if you overrun your car, if you let it run out of oil, then your engine's going to be completely broken. And once it's broken, like say your muscle, you injure your muscle and then you have to get it repaired. It's never going to be the same again. It's like blowing an engine. You can't really fix that engine. If you do, it's never going to be like a new engine.
Okay. All right, let's get into something crazy. Now, this is a gun-related deal that you're probably not going to believe because it came out of Europe. You're like, European people have guns? Well, you know, the state has guns in Europe, and some of the peasants are given permission by the state to possess guns, and some people can even actually go to a gun club, take their gun out of the designated safe and shoot it and then go put it back in. They're allowed to do that. Some peasants are allowed to go out in the woods and shoot animals in Europe. But essentially, in Europe, if you want to be an armed citizen, an armed guy or girl, it's an expensive proposition. You have to pay for you have to pay the requisite fees and application permit fees, license fees, all that good jazz. And don't think they just give it to you one time and say, okay, you're good for the rest of your life. Oh, no, no, no. You have to continuously renew that and continuously give them money. Now, in the United States of America, there is a permit system in most states for concealed carry, but you don't have to do that. You're not required by law to get a permit to possess a gun. In Europe, you have to do that, and it's a very expensive proposition. It's not like $50. So basically, what they've done in the old country is they've turned gun ownership into a wealthy man's game. If you're a peasant, if you're a poor person, you can forget about that because poor people can't afford that stuff. Now, the reason I'm setting this up is because this story came from Interpol. And all you cats and kittens who like James Bond movies and international spy movies know that they're always talking about Interpol, the International Police Agency. And I believe Interpol is headquartered, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's in merry old England. But generally, it's the Interpol is this world police organization that operates primarily. Maybe it's in. Well, I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The fact is they're in Europe, which is not exactly what I would call a gun-friendly or liberty-friendly area, which is kind of ironic since we spilled how many, the blood of hundreds of thousands of American lives to liberate Europe. Has anyone ever, you guys out there in the Student of the Gun listening audience, you ever pause, have a quiet moment, and think about how socialist Europe is, whether it's France or Spain or Italy or England, Denmark, whatever, you name it. All the socialism that's going on there, all the lack of liberty and the loss of freedom. And then think about your grandfathers and your great-grandfathers, how they went over there. And some of them, I'm betting, some of you folks here that are listening to the sound of my voice, you may have had relatives, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, who gave their lives so that the people of Europe could have, quote-unquote, liberty. And what have they done with that precious gift that we gave them? How have they squandered that? Kind of makes me sad, makes me a little bit depressed. But this, Jared, do you know the French pronunciation of this CHRLIEHEBDO? 'Cause I heard someone on the radio today pronounce it Charlie Hebdo.
That's probably it.
Charlie Hebdo.
I don't speak French.
You don't
but
speak frog?
I know people that do.
Don't speak frog. Oh, maybe you should ask your little friend Alex.
Oh yeah, she would know.
Doesn't
She's learning.
have
she
the
speaks
frog
French,
lingity?
Yeah.
All right. The story is this. It comes from Interpol. It says, Interpol, allowing citizens to carry guns in public is most effective way to prevent terror attacks. Yada, 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 yada. What? January 8th, 2015, a story by Nikolai Senels. Wow. How long would the jihadis at Charlie Hebdo, Westgate, Mumbai, and many other terror attacks to come be able to continue killing if they were surrounded by armed citizens? Question mark. Interpol states that the only way to stop such attacks is to allow citizens to carry arms, and the only alternative to an armed citizenry is extraordinary security surrounding every area where people meet, train stations, supermarkets, schools, with armed guards, which is, of course, unrealistic. If guns are illegal, only violent criminals, fanatic jihadis, and our overworked, understaffed police will have them. Are you sure this came out of... This is 10news.dk. And you're like, .dk? Yeah, that's from Denmark. This is a Danish...
I thought it was Donkey Kong.
Yeah. This is a Danish English language website from Denmark that put this story up. Whoa. I can't believe this. In case you're unsure whether it's a good idea that citizens legally own firearms, Switzerland has very liberal gun laws and good use of the word liberal, and one of the lowest percentages of homicide in the world. Interesting statistics on guns, homicide, and firearms-related accidents are in the U.S. are here, and they have a little link.
Yeah, but that's not what the people that we talked about yesterday said. They said that more guns equals more crime.
Well, yeah, how do they juxtapose that with Switzerland, where actually I believe it still is. Now, you guys, if you're in Switzerland, I know that they've changed things over the years, and they've tightened things up because they had one or two people go wacko, and they're like, oh, we better tighten things up. But I believe that Switzerland still has a very strong citizen militia, and that every able-bodied male is expected to be part of the citizen militia in Switzerland. And folks, say whatever you will, the fact is, in how many centuries now that Switzerland has been a country, it has never been taken over, and it has never fallen to a foreign power, even though it was right smack dab in the middle of Europe during World War I and World War II and the Cold War and everything. And everybody just kind of goes around Switzerland. They're like, Hitler went around it. They're like, okay, we know you guys are there. We're going to take everything around you. You just kind of cool out and do your thing. Same thing in World War I and previous wars before that. But according to ABC News, Interpol Secretary General Ronald Nobel said today, and that would have been the 8th, the U.S. and the rest of the democratic world is at a security crossroads in the wake of last month's deadly al-Shabaab. Oh, this is old news from the Nairobi thing. I'm sorry. This was just dropped into the story. The deadly al-Shabaab attack at the shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya, and suggested an answer could be in arming civilians. In an exclusive interview with ABC, Nobel said that there are really only two choices for protecting open societies from a Westgate Mall-type attack, and where so-called soft targets are hit, and that's what a mall is, it's a soft target. Either create secure perimeters around the locations or allow citizens to carry guns. Wow. And Nobel continues, it says, societies have to think about how they're going to approach the problem. One is to say we want an armed citizenry. You can see the reason for that. Another is to say that enclaves are so secure that in order to get into a soft target, you're going to have to pass through extraordinary security. And that's what we call in the military here, current military, the green zone mentality. And all you Iraq vets know about the green zone, and you know how well that worked out. It's okay, you don't need guns in here, it's the green zone. Until, boom, there goes a car bomb. Or pop, 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 there goes Johnny Jihad, who was hired as a security officer for this facility and given an AK, and he decided to go all jihad on everybody. And since it's the green zone, none of us are carrying guns. That didn't work out very well. Here's what I will tell you guys, and what you should understand by now from listening to Student of the Gun, is you cannot sterilize the world.
He wrote that article, I don't even, how long ago was that? Years?
2003 or 2004.
Yeah, decade. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's at least 10 years ago that I wrote the article, you cannot sterilize the world.
Did we republish that yet?
I don't know. It's probably somewhere out there on the internets.
Okay.
But my point is this, and I wrote You Cannot Sterilize the World after it was 3 school attacks. There was the Amish school where the guy went wacko and like walked in and did horrible things. There's another one where another guy went wacko and walked into a school and like took hostages and molested the girls that were there. And then there's a third one where a hostage died. But my point is this, is people are like, oh, we need greater security, we need more cameras. Folks, we don't need more cameras. You know, people that say, security cameras. All right, security cameras do not provide security. They simply record what's going down. All right, that's it. So security cameras are not the answer. And disarming the people, I know you're like, well, you're the host of Student of the Gun. Of course you don't want people to be disarmed. Folks, I present for you a maximum security prison. All right, maximum security prisons. Correctional officers do shakedowns all the time in maximum security prisons. And guess what they come up with in the prisons? Weapons. They may be improvised weapons. They may be shivs and shanks and so forth, but they're weapons. Hey, I got a question for you. Do prisoners ever murder other prisoners in jail, inside of prisons? Do people ever get murdered inside of prisons, Jared?
Yeah.
Well, how can that be? They're not allowed to have guns in there.
Well, they're not allowed to have toothpick shanks either, but...
But if you eliminate guns, then you eliminate murder and assault and rape and robbery. So, dude, I just had this freaking crazy epiphany. According to our previous story about Hawaii and all that nonsense and how, the new Stanford study that says more guns equal more crime, let's go ahead and do the community of a maximum security prison. And according to the gun control advocates, if you remove firearms from the society, then you will remove assault, rape, robbery, and murder. Jared, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Do you believe that in our prison systems where none of the prisoners have guns, that there's ever an instance of murder, assault, rape, or robbery?
That happens all the time.
But how could that possibly be? They're not allowed to have guns. You mean removing guns from the society doesn't remove the criminal intent? What? That's crazy talk. All right, so here we have a story from Interpol, and what they did is they actually, after the terror attacks, they went back and they found this interview of the Interpol Secretary General, and they republished it, which is just amazing. And I'm shocked. Now, I guess I'm not shocked that I wasn't aware of this, because the headline to this story, Interpol Secretary General suggests allowing citizens to carry guns is the most effective way to prevent terrorist attacks. That really doesn't fit with the big media narrative. This is not a story that the editors over at the Communist News Network or Microsoft News Broadcasting Service or whatever, that's not really a story that fits with their narrative that guns are bad and people shouldn't have guns. So they're not going to lead with a story like this. As a matter of fact, they're probably going to bury it and never talk about it. But we talked about it right here on Student of the Gun, and so you are welcome. Now, speaking of Europe, we've got a lot of stuff going on over in Europe right now, and we've told you this before. Britain is going to fall. Britain is going to fall to Islamofascism, and they really don't have a choice because they're disarmed. Not only are the people of Britain disarmed physically as slaves, they're tax slaves, they've convinced them that, well, first of all, you can't have guns. You can have a toy that you call a gun that you're allowed to play with under strict supervision of the state. You can go out and shoot clay targets like a little or something like that. But as far as using guns to stop bad people, no, that's out of the question in merry old England. And they've been doing this for years and years and years, and they figured out that they still have violent crimes. So they scratch their heads and they can't figure out why. So they came up with a new program to convince British tax slaves that they can't be trusted with sharp objects and that they need to turn in all their sharp objects because that knife, you may be hurt with your own knife. You are, what is this thing? 7 times more like, or 7 out of 10 people injured with knives are injured with their own knives or something stupid like that. So in merry old England, they have disarmed the people from guns. No guns for you. They are convincing them that they can't be trusted with sharp objects. But now that we've disarmed them and we've convinced them that they're too imbecilic to be trusted with sharp objects, well, what's next? Well, we just have this terrorist attack, right, in France. And David Cameron, the Tory leader, he's supposed to be somewhat like, down with the liberty and the freedom, but that's not really the case. It says spies, this is the name of the story, it's from telegraph.com.uk. Spies should be able to monitor all online messaging, says David Cameron. And you're like, what? A quote from David Cameron, who's running for re-election in merry old England. He says, "If I am Prime Minister, I will make sure that it is a comprehensive piece of legislation that does not."
That sentence does not make sense.
It doesn't. I hate reading sentences like that. It says, "If I am Prime Minister, I will make sure that it is a comprehensive piece of legislation that does not allow terrorists safe space to communicate with each other."
You must be talking about the
something that's already like implied. The death of the editor and the death of journalism.
That was in the beginning of the story before they talk about anything, so you can't
figure
out what it's implying.
I'm just depressed. Okay.
Well, since the Second Amendment doesn't cover ARs, the First Amendment doesn't cover online messaging.
Well, exactly, and that's what we talked about yesterday. This story is jaded. It's definitely jaded. No, it's dated 12 January 2015. The security services will be given powers to read all messages sent over the Internet if conservatives win general election. Now, this doesn't sound like a real conservative idea to me. This sounds kind of like a big government Democrat type. Who in America would be supporting this? It would be your inner city Democrats, your Bloombergs and your Bidens and people like that, your Comrade Barrys. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, made the pledge at a campaign event attended by up to 100 conservative activists in Nottingham. I wonder if the sheriff was there. You think the sheriff was there? I don't know. He might have been. Well, the police and intelligence agencies have expressed concerns that they are not able to access the content of some of the new ways to communicate over the Internet. What? You're telling me that the state in England cannot monitor every form of communication?
That's unheard of.
We cannot allow this to stand.
That's crazy. Now, like this new phone that I have, the text messaging actually works over Wi-Fi, so it's technically working over Internet.
Yeah, over the Internet, right.
So I'm assuming that is over the Internet messaging, which means that they can check your texts as well as your Facebook, your Twitter, your all these messaging apps.
The Prime Minister, who on Monday morning chaired a meeting of the security services to discuss the lessons that may be learned from last week's terror attack in Paris. Really? Okay.
This is the lesson that we learned.
This is the lesson that we learned
out of all the lessons
from jihadis getting RPK. Did they have a RPK? I thought they said they had a rocket launcher, an RPK, and like 3 AKs and a Scorpion machine pistol or something. Anyway, so they got all this Soviet hardware, and they go walk into a magazine office, a publishing office, and start killing people. And so how we're going to stop these guys is we're going to make sure that we can read everyone's communication. Okay. He said, discussing lessons learned from last week's terrorist attack in Paris, said the Tory government would pass a law in the next parliament to ensure that the police and security services can read internet messages. And it says the problem at the moment was that new ways of communicating over the internet were impossible for agencies to keep track of, he said. Plans for a communications data bill branded as the Snoopers Charter. They're so gay. Oh, my God. They're so gay. The Snoopers Charter by critics were blocked by Liberal Democrat opposition and the coalition. They have like the opposite going on over there. Wow. But conservatives have signaled that they will revive the legislation in the security. You know what they don't have in England, Jared? You know what they're missing and why all this nonsense keeps coming to fruition? What are they missing? It's this little thing called a Bill of...
I was going to say common sense. But...
No, but a Bill of Rights. That's a rhetorical question, Woodcock. Not a Bill of Privileges, but a Bill of Rights. Wow. Holy crap noodles. I just saw there's a title in this story. It says, related articles. Cameron, we need more power against Islamist death cult. All right, stop the freaking presses. Did he say the words death cult in public? Because if he did, I'm freaked out right here. Because nobody will call them what they are. Everyone's afraid. They're like, oh, radical is misunderstanders of the peaceful religion of Islam.
That's not in my related stories, so I don't know. Did you click on it?
Yeah, I clicked on it.
Did he actually say that?
It says...
the same dude that wants to monitor...
more comprehensive powers to monitor suspects, and I'm going down here. I'm trying to find this quote. It says, he said, okay, this is a quote. He said, Britain is facing the same threat as France from what he described as, quote, this fanatical death cult, of Islamic extremist violence. That sounds like he's coming pretty close to referring to Islam as a death cult, which is just crazy that a British person would actually say that in public.
Since they get arrested for reciting.
Yeah, for reciting
Thomas
words
Paine,
of Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill. That's
yeah, they read Churchill in public, and they were arrested for creating a nuisance. So what do you guys think? Do you think that the state, and you're like, oh, it's England. I don't live in England. I don't care. Do you think that the hippie liberal douche faces that inhabit the United States of America can't read and can't hear and don't think, yeah, that's right. We need to have the power to read everyone's instant. What's really the conundrum here is they've already cracked the whole code on the phone calls and the text messages and stuff. But apparently some of these services, Jared, you're a hip kid. Tell me some of these like chat apps. What they're basically talking about is the downloadable chat apps.
Yeah, there's like Voxer is one that I use. You can voice text and regular text.
I think they threw
Keek or KIK or however you say that. I don't know.
I think they threw Snapchat in there and some other things where the transmissions were encrypted from user to receiver, and they're really hacked off that the intelligence agencies can't read everyone's chats. Now, riddle me this, Batman. Every time they catch or they see evidence of Johnny Jihad freaking out in England and like cutting grandma's head off, what is the first thing that the state security agency does when they get in front of a camera? What do they say? we don't want to rush to judgment. We're not ready to call this an act of terrorism. We don't know that this has anything to do with Islamic fundamentalism. A convert to Islam, a guy who was trying to convert his neighbors to Islam, goes and cuts an old woman's head off with a machete. And the first thing the state representative does is gets in front of a camera and says, we're not going to rush to judgment, and we're not ready to label this as an act of terrorism. So tell me this there, Mr. Cameron. What good does it do for you to hack and read all these emails if when you see terrorism right in your face, when you see people who have killed in the name of Allah right in front of you, and you can't or won't do anything about that? But what you need is more power and more authority to read everyone's emails and everyone's text messages. So you can do what? You're obviously cowards. I'm sorry, folks. If you're listening to me in England, I feel bad for you. But your government is nutless. It won't call out terrorism. It won't do anything about it. And you've allowed so many radical goat lovers to come into your country now. What are you going to do to get rid of them? Oh, let me guess. They're moderate Muslims and they don't support terrorism and jihad and whatever. So, you know what? You guys know, oh, I know a Muslim person and they're a good person. Thank you for the anecdote. Shut up. You want to talk to me about Muslim, that these radical extremists? Let's say that there's 1.2 billion Muslims in the world and that only 5% of the 1.2 billion are radical jihadists. Do the math. How many radical jihadists is there? 1 million? Okay. So, yeah, tell me again. And also, tell me again how the average Muslim and the moderate Muslim doesn't support the actions. They don't? Okay. Let me see. 9/11, September 11th, 2001. Misunderstanders of the religion of peace drive planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and they tried to drive another one, but thanks to some patriots, it went down into a field in Pennsylvania. And what happened around the world? I seem to remember very deliberate. I specifically remember what happened around the world. I remember in Indonesia, members of the religion of peace celebrating in the streets, dancing around, making T-shirts with Osama bin Laden's face on them. Okay?
There were celebrations here in America, too.
In Syria, Damascus, they're having parades and parties. In Tehran, parades and parties.
I don't remember which one of our friends it was. It was somebody that I was talking to that was one of the responders in where the Twin Towers actually got hit. They said that it was sickening to them that they saw celebrations going on in America, and no news media covered that either.
Oh, well, we'll say, okay, Paul. All right, Paul. Come on. That was then. This is now. The moderate Muslims, they have learned their ways, and they're no longer going to celebrate atrocities and murders. Hey, do you guys remember just about a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, that two misunderstanders of religion of peace walked into a temple in Israel and murdered a bunch of people with axes, hatchets and axes, and one of them had a pistol. And what were they doing in Palestine? What were they doing in Syria? Oh, they were dancing in the streets, waving flags, and they were handing out candy to little children in celebration of the attack. People like to talk about the reaction of the Muslim street. After every single one of these instances, you go to a country that is predominantly Muslim, and they're out partying in the streets. So tell me again how the average Muslim looks down at these acts and is ashamed by them and doesn't support them. When the Muslim street comes out in mass in protest against this, then you can come talk to me. But until then, I don't want to hear it. And if you tell me that, the average Muslim doesn't support them, or the average Muslim is afraid to come out in public and say anything against the jihadis, then what does that tell you, knucklehead? If you're afraid to criticize them, what does that tell you? That it is not the religion of peace. That according to, and I'm freaked out here. I'm totally freaked out that David Cameron actually referred to these goat lovers as the Islamist death cult. That is crazy to me. I didn't think he had the stones. I didn't think anyone in England had the stones to say that. But hey, rock on, dude. Rock on.
It's like CrossFit being a cult.
You need to share that. Was it College Humor?
Yeah, College Humor did a video on CrossFitters.
On the cult of CrossFit.
And you know what's funny?
It's funny.
Is I posted that, or I did something with it, and I had all these CrossFit people like, "Oh, you just don't like CrossFit because you're not in shape and blah blah blah."
You don't
I'm
understand.
Like, you don't even know me.
You don't understand.
The CrossFit as a workout is like normal.
You know, what did we call it? We called it, and we did CrossFit on Marine Corps on Parris Island in basic training, and they called it circuit training.
Yeah, that's what we called it, interval training or circuit training or whatever
Yeah.
it was. We did that. We did that in freaking kindergarten or whatever in wrestling.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when you were in Pee Wee wrestling, it was called interval training, but you didn't have a cool name for it. You didn't call it CrossFit, and you didn't have like skin tight T-shirts and stuff. And I like how the CrossFitters act like they invented the kettlebell. It's like, dude, Russians like when they figure out how to pour hot metal into molds and put a little handly thing on it. They've been doing kettlebells for, I don't know, a long time. Yeah. But what I find hilarious is, do you remember when Sonny Bazikas would taught you that kettlebell workout up there at John's, and that was what? That was like 2006.
I think I was 16.
Yeah, it was like 2005, 2006 time frame. That was before the CrossFit madness. And now they act like they've invented kettlebell training or something. It's like, oh, we've always been doing that. It's like, whatever, just shut up.
The first time I was introduced to a kettlebell was actually Woody in Loudonville. Mm-hmm. I think when Mom...
Killbuck.
Oh, yeah, Killbuck. When you sent Mom over there to do the concealed carry class.
Yep.
Yeah, we were doing kettlebells there.
Yeah, Woody Wilson was doing kettlebell workouts.
Yeah, we actually had to do kettlebell workouts as part of or Mom did. I wasn't doing the class, but it was part of the concealed carry class.
Yeah, he did. He actually had I think his class was 16 hours. It was like a 2-day class. It was way more than you had to do. But it's just funny. The CrossFit Games, talk about a monumental waste of time and energy. Well, it's not... Did anybody here ever watch? Did you ever watch the Eastbound and Down first season? He says he's an out of work baseball player, professional baseball player, and he goes to his old high school, and the principal's telling him about how he's getting ready for a triathlon, and he goes, dude, stop. He goes, I'm a professional athlete. I'm not trying to be the best at exercising. Did you? All right, all you CrossFitters, just calm down. Unbunge your panties. Put your skin-tight T-shirts back on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, man, it is 44 minutes already. I can't believe it. I had a story about
the best thing about CrossFit.
Talking about CrossFit,
yoga pants.
Yoga pants. Well, that is a big thumbs up. I will give them that. Well, we got a story about how Idaho State University has decided to cancel their orders for AR-15 rifles, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow on Student of the Gun Radio.
He's getting snippy.
If that's okay with you.
There.
If that's okay with you, I know what I'm doing. All right, kids. Thanks for joining us for the Wednesday edition of Student of the Gun, and we will talk to you mañana.